I told you at the beginning that I feared this story would be a Roshomon, a story where no clear narrative exists and every account contradicts the other. But it turns out this isn't so. There is a relatively clear narrative here. But this story is Roshomon in another way. Roshomon is a story of sexual violence that has no heroes, only victims, liars, and survivors. This is what made the film so brilliant. There is no protagonist, the world is just a hell, and we are all stuck with our own truths. In the abuses in Mia's home, there are no heroes, only victims, liars, and survivors. Mia wants to appear like a hero with her crusading and her humanitarianism and her serial adoptions, but in her gaslighting of her own children and her ability to falsify journalism, she turned out to be a liar. Ronan was a hero for his role in convicting Harvey Weinstein, but in the abuses in his own home, he has proven to be a liar as well. Dylan is a victim and a survivor, but in retelling her mother's story, she has inherited her mother's lies. Tam, Thaddeus, Lark, Soon-Yi, and Moses are all victims, but sadly, only Soon-Yi and Moses are survivors. So far, none of them have been proven to be liars, but nor are they heroes. What would a hero be like? A hero would find justice for all the victims, dead and alive. A hero would make sure the abuser faces the harsh daylight of justice and be investigated for potential crimes. A hero would find reconciliation for the remaining survivors and heal the bond that severed the family. A hero would bring truth and light to the community so that we understood what truly happened. It's not likely that Mia would meet justice despite having abused more of her own children than any other living celebrity. It's not likely that the family would ever reconcile. There are no heroes in this story. It's been difficult to even bring the truth to the story. The abuses in Mia's home is like the wooded forest in Roshomon, where sunlight barely breaks through and the truth is covered in shadows. Many of those shadows are because of the press. I mentioned how our biases have prevented us from seeing the truth of this story, but I didn't mention one additional one. And perhaps this bias casts a taller shadow than all of the rest. It's our own ideology. Those who are extremely right-wing don't care about immigrants and Asian Americans, so they won't see the truth of the story. Those who are extremely woke don't want to believe a mother can be an abuser, a victim can be a liar, and a rich man can be innocent. They too won't see the truth to the story. We learned that there are many types of victims in this story, and they each responded to their abuse differently. Dylan needs to vilify Woody to come to terms with her abuse, and she wants to use the public to resolve her trauma. Soon-Yi and Moses, on the other hand, dealt with their abuse outside the public eye and showed little interest in seeing Mia be prosecuted. They only told their story publicly to counter the hysteria. Meanwhile, Samantha Geimer forgave her rapist, Roman Polanski. Many people will be surprised to hear that. How did that happen? First off, Roman Polanski went to jail. He didn't get away with rape. He did the crime. He did the time. He apologized. She felt that was enough of a sentence, but it wasn't just that. They both hated the press and the justice system. Samantha Geimer found something she hated worse than her rapist: the journalists, the media, the court system. In the courts, they found a common enemy, and it allowed them to form a bond of mutual respect, like two people who ended up somewhere neither of them wanted to be. In her memoir, she writes, "As different as our lives have been, we do share a common sense of battle fatigue when it comes to the court system and the media. We've both been punished. We both want to move on." Many detest the fact that Samantha Geimer forgave Roman Polanski, but that's the inconvenient thing about forgiveness. It may not fit our need to vilify and shame another person, but her forgiveness is for her to give. Her forgiveness reminds me of a much more horrific crime. In 2015, after a racist gunman killed 9 members of a black congregation at Mother Emanuel Church in Charleston, the world was shocked, though sadly these killing sprees had become more common. This pitiful man wallowed and succumbed to racist ideology, an ideology he used to justify murdering 9 people. Yet, at his sentencing hearing, when the surviving members had the chance to berate him, to vilify him, to scream at him, they didn't respond in kind. They responded in kindness, with forgiveness.
The daughter of Ethel Lance speaking to him directly.
I would never talk to her ever again. I would never be able to hold her again.
For me, I'm a work in progress.
and I acknowledge that I am very angry. But one thing DePaid has always joined in our family with is that she taught me that we are the family that love built. We have no room for hate, so we have to forgive. And I pray God on your soul.
Their forgiveness reminds me of a concept, the concept of restorative justice, a system of justice that aims at reconciliation, healing, and making amends rather than vilification. It feels right because it puts truth and reconciliation at its core, and we can only come to the truth when we stop vilifying and start paying attention to facts. And in my own life, I think the concept is sound. It's how we should treat people who hurt us or whom we've hurt. We should have an honest dialogue. We do horrible things to each other. We cheat, we hurt, then we lie about it because we're ashamed. Shame may control antisocial behaviors, but it never leads to the truth. We should find a shared understanding of what happened and learn to move forward with clarity, closure, and transformation so we don't do it again. It's difficult to do, but it does sound right. It's something Woody and Mia were never able to do. Instead, they dragged the courts and the press into their relationship, and that's the last thing you should do if you want the truth to come to life. And their children paid the price, some more than others. That's the reason why restorative justice won't work on a mass scale. It's un-American. The problem with Woody Allen and the abuse of Dylan Farrow is that it shows us we are full of shit. We say a woman should be free to choose whomever she wants to be with because she's nobody's property. Unless she chooses to be with an older man, then we can shame her for being groomed and a dumb puppet. We say believe all women, unless that woman is an Asian woman. Sure, believe all women, unless those women testify to a man's innocence. We say we are deeply concerned about victims, but only if the victims are white girls. We say innocent until proven guilty, but not if you're Woody Allen. We say we believe everyone should have the freedom to love another human being, regardless of who they are, gay, straight, or trans. Then we shame an old Jewish guy and an immigrant woman because they're unconventional. We say we treat women unfairly in this country, but we let Mia Farrow get away with slut-shaming another woman and making a little boy stand naked in the corner so his white siblings could look at his junk. She committed multiple counts of child abuse, pressured women who worked for her. Oh, but she's not creepy. Let's go after her ex-boyfriend instead for being creepy. And sure, Woody is creepy because he liked a young woman whom he fell in love with and ended up marrying. Well, he slept with a teenager too. That's true. Let's not forget that. And Mia Farrow had sex with that same person. And Frank Sinatra slept with a teenage Mia Farrow. And Mick Jagger had a penchant for young girls. Steven Tyler dated a teenager. David Bowie slept with teenage fans. Jimmy Page slept with one of those same teenage fans. Seinfeld dated a teenager whom he married. Priscilla dated Elvis Presley when she was 14. Jerry Lee Lewis married his teenage cousin when she was 13. Edgar Allan Poe married his teenage cousin when she was 13, but at least those relationships were consensual. Asia Argento sexually assaulted a teenager, and the shame of it led to her boyfriend's suicide, Anthony Bourdain. Oh, but Woody Allen is the creepy one. Sure. You know who else used to be creepy? A black man consorting with a white woman. And do we think we're better than the lynch mob? If you were black and born in that town, you would have served him right up to that white mob because you wouldn't want them grabbing you instead. And if you were white, you would come to the party. And when they strung him up or poured kerosene on him, you'd think you'd be standing there saying, "Aw, geez, this is a horrible travesty of justice. Give me a break." I don't care what you are now, Republican, Democrat, progressive, woke. If you were born then, you'd be right there, laughing it up, having a grand old time at the picnic with 1,000 other people. You'd gawk while they tortured him for hours, and when he finally gasped his last breath, you'd buy a picture of the lynching. You'd grab a burnt piece of the dead body and take it home as a souvenir, and you'd give it to your son and say, "He's just a creepy N-word. Good riddance." And your son would say, "Aw, thanks, Dad." And he'd put that burnt flesh on his shelf, and he'd hang that picture on his wall, and he wouldn't feel the least bit guilty about it. That's the power of accusing someone of being sexual with the wrong person. That's the power of vilifying another human being for being creepy. It shuts down dialogue. It shuts down compassion. But it feels good. It sends us into a murderous bacchanalia. It makes us all monsters. Who is the real pervert here? The man they tortured or the mob? Who gets off on humiliating another human being? And the press, then and now, wasn't a friend to innocent people. They announced their lynchings in advance so everyone can come to the party. And afterwards, they talked about how these men deserved it. They got what was coming to them. The courts weren't any better. No one was prosecuted for these lynchings. America is a place where everyone is a pervert, but everyone acts like they're not. We think we're sexually liberated, but we're sexually repressed. We get our kicks on humiliating people for their relationships, whether those relationships are real or not. These journalists act like the one person at the orgy who's horrified by everyone else being at the orgy. And when I say we're full of shit, I do mean we. I include myself. I told you at the beginning, I thought Woody Allen was a predator too, based on no facts whatsoever. Restorative justice is a great concept, but it won't work on a mass scale in America because it's too good for us. Most Americans aren't as gracious as Dory Previn or Moses or Sun Yi, who dealt with their betrayal and abuses in stride. Most Americans are not as mature as Samantha Geimer or as courageous as the congregation of Mother Emanuel Church. Most Americans are sick with the need to get retribution, humiliate, and hate. We are one species in the family of apes. We think we are logical, but like all primates, we are not. We are emotional, and our emotions control us, not vice versa. Our court system is built around it. It's built around vilification, antagonism, and social shaming. The good prosecutor has to vilify the defendant. The good defense attorney has to vilify the accuser. We shame victims of rape. We shame those who are falsely accused. We give two shits about the facts of what actually happened to them. And the better these lawyers do it, the more cases they win. And the more they win, the bigger cases they take, and the more money they make. A shared truth doesn't win cases or build careers. Vilification does. Woody's lack of prosecution in the courts is not the norm. All those other poor souls spent time in jail for false accusations levied against him without a shred of evidence. It's no better on the other side either. Slut-shaming a victim of rape in court is a strategy. Why? Because it works. Shaming and vilification works better than truth. And if you really think lawyers have principles, you watch too much TV. One of Harvey Weinstein's lawyers was a renowned advocate for women who suffered sexual assault. Lawyers don't have principles. They have cases. We convict and send more people to jail than any other country. Why? Because it makes money for our prison systems while nurturing our psychological need to feel safe and to vilify others. And it builds the careers of prosecutors. We are literally the least free place on the planet. But Americans sure love talking about freedom, don't we? We call it the justice system and not justice because it isn't justice. It's just a system, and Woody was just lucky. The only reason he didn't go to jail wasn't because he was innocent. It was because he was rich. The courts are just a business. The press is even worse than the courts. Willful ignorance, leaving out key facts, uncorroborated quotes with no fact-checking. They'll use racist caricatures of an immigrant woman while claiming to care about victims. They ignore empowering stories of survivors who live happy lives. That's boring. They want endless trauma so we can vilify and feel morally outraged. That's how you get attention. That's how you create hysteria. They make a story even more confusing. They willfully throw mud in the water to get us off a scent of a real crime. Shaming and humiliation are the norm. People bandy the word Me Too around while ignoring some of its core principles, truth and reconciliation. It got better for a while, then it got worse again. The press used to call opinions editorialism, and it used to be a small part of any paper. The rest of it was facts. Now, in the digital age especially, nearly all journalism is editorialism. They're all opinionators, and they don't even bother providing a cursory view of the facts before immediately shaming their subjects. They include ad hominems right there in the title. I couldn't find robust analysis on this story that uses details from the custody trial or specific details from the investigations from any major journal in the past decade, even though the story has been back in the news for the past 7 years. There was nothing fair about Vanity Fair. It's an oxymoron. It's just vanity. Mia's vanity. Maureen Orth's vanity. Meanwhile, Ronan gets a Pulitzer, Dylan gets a book deal, and the New Yorker congratulates itself for glomming onto a movement that Tarana Burke started, while its darling tries to shut down the story of abuse of an immigrant woman. So much for a free press. And they all ignored the deaths and abuses of multiple children because no one cares about immigrants and Asians. Journalism and the press are on a death spiral. They are choking to death due to a lack of circulation and leveraged buyouts, malnourished from a steady diet of clicks and likes, and it seems like the first thing to go is due diligence. We hate the guy in the Oval Office for using the term fake news, but the same people who hate him produce fake news. You're not helping your cause. They're more interested in industry awards, attention grabbing, clicks, likes, subscriptions, sales, and careers. The press is just like the courts. They're not interested in truth. They're a business. For restorative justice to work on a mass scale, we would need to gut the justice system, and we would need to get rid of the press, which only feeds our need for vilification and shaming. America is not a community with a shared story and a healthy public dialogue. America has two things, neither of which are about a shared truth: First, it's a big social experiment where none of us know what we're doing. We hide our thoughts and our behaviors for fear of being shamed, but we love to humiliate others for saying or doing the wrong thing. It's a place where different rules apply differently to different people all the time. The second part of America is everything else. Our jobs, our entertainment, our courts, our press, our idea of freedom. That's just a business.
You are a cynical bastard, you know that?
To regain the American dream and reaffirm that fundamental truth that out of many we are one.
You hear that line? Line's for you. Don't make me laugh. We're one people. It's a myth created by Thomas Jefferson. Oh, now you never go with Jefferson, huh? My friend, Jefferson's an American saint because he wrote the words, all men are created equal. Words he clearly didn't believe since he allowed his own children to live in slavery. He was a rich wine snob who was sick of paying taxes to the Brits. So yeah, he wrote some lovely words and aroused the rabble, and they went out and died for those words. While he sat back and drank his wine and fucked his slave girl. This guy wants to tell me we're living in a community. Don't make me laugh. I'm living in America, and in America you're on your own. America's not a country. It's just a business. Now fucking pay me.
The problem with Woody Allen and the abuse of Dylan Farrow is that, like all great American things, it isn't real. It's just a myth, like Manifest Destiny, like our respect for motherhood, or the notion that we are a free country, or the threat of black men raping white women, or that Satanists are raping your children. It's just an idea, but it's the most powerful kind of idea because it's based on sexual violation, shame, humiliation, and vilification, and that makes it impervious to the truth. Now, I may sound like a cynic. Well, that's because I am. Roshomon 2 was a cynical story about a hellish world full of predatory behavior where no one is trustworthy. Yet despite that, the film ends with the action of an impoverished woodcutter. Despite having 5 children of his own and being poor and having enough of his own problems, despite having a low opinion of everyone else, he decided to take care of an abandoned child, and it restores the priest's faith in humanity. The woodcutter is just an ordinary person, like you and me, but he did the right thing. Though there aren't any heroes in the abuses in Mia's home, at least ordinary people, like you and me, are doing better. Today, in our everyday behaviors, we abuse children less than we used to. We are being more responsible than we have in the past. What happened to me as children is happening less and less. Mia Farrow is an outlier, not the norm. We also commit sexual assault less than we used to. More and more of us in our everyday lives, in our offline lives, are treating people well. Now, I don't want to be Pollyanna about this, and you can definitely argue with the numbers, no doubt. And we definitely have blind spots, as I pointed out earlier. And there will always be bad elements, unreported cases, and there are spikes due to the pandemic. And child emotional abuse hasn't declined as much as sexual and physical abuse, so we need to keep getting better at this. But multiple studies do show that in general, we are making progress. We are doing well. Things are going in the right direction. Yet you don't hear about this too often. And that's the thing. I don't believe for an instant that our ability to treat each other better, to treat children better, has anything to do with the media or the justice system. We did it despite them. But America is an ongoing experiment. Who knows what the future holds? I've pointed out how we used to do horrible things to each other, and I think we still do. But the truth is also that we are learning to treat each other better, slowly but surely. We can't let them take that away from us. Restorative justice may not work in America, but it can work in our private lives. We have to have faith that our conversations with friends and family, coworkers and neighbors are better than our conversations online and in the press. In other words, our private discourse has to be better than our public discourse. Fortunately, that is not on the media or the justice system. That's on you and me, and I have more faith in you and me than I do in them, because we're better than them. That's what the evidence shows. And we're going to have to drag them into the future, kicking and screaming. Look, I will remain open to facts, and perhaps new facts may come to light. I went through thousands of data points here. I'm absolutely sure I missed something or got something wrong. I don't have complete certainty. I only ended up here because I wanted to read some jokes while pooping without feeling guilty, but I got no skin in this game. I just don't like being lied to, and I'm ever searching for the truth. I'm pretty sure I got the totality of this story right, but I can't admit to being wrong. Perhaps Dylan was sexually assaulted by Woody. Perhaps Soon-Yi and Moses are a pack of liars. Perhaps Mia's nannies and housekeepers are liars too. Perhaps all those women who testified in court have no integrity. Perhaps the Yale New Haven investigators and the New York Department of Social Services were paid off by Woody. Perhaps Woody poisoned Lark Previn and truly was responsible for her death, as well as the deaths of Thaddeus and Tam. Perhaps it's a vast Jewish conspiracy with the grand puppet master, who's also a Satanist. I'm willing to believe that. I don't put anything past anyone. But show me the facts first. The great thing about being me is that I'm not a journalist, and I may be a cynic, but I try not to be an ideologue, so I can change my mind based on new evidence. Like I said at the beginning, I was like most of you. I was fairly confident that Woody was a predator. I changed my mind. Speaking of which, why was I so confident in my wrong opinion before I knew all of the facts? Well, I guess another comedian said it better than me.